Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. It's great to be with you. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but it looks like a really interesting conference that you're all having. I'm going to talk today about some work done in partnership with USAID, FHI 360, and the Wash Plus folks and the public-private partnership for hand washing. And this project is focusing really on how we can bring more behavioral science and specifically habit change thinking to the practice of hand washing. And so if we think about two big kind of classic problems that we have when any of us are trying to change human behavior, whether that's through new infrastructure in a country or education programs in schools or designing new products and technologies, the two classic problems that we have is that our interventions kind of do a good job of changing people's minds, but their behavior kind of stays as it always was. The second problem is that we might sort of temporarily succeed in changing people's minds and their behavior, but over time, people's behavior kind of drifts back to the old unhealthy way of doing things. So you may temporarily get people to change hand-washing behavior, but over time they relapse to the old way of acting. And this pattern, which we see in behavior change in general, many different kinds of domains, certainly happens for hand washing too. So lots of evidence that you can see some data here from Bangladesh. The blue line there is the percentage of people who understand that you should wash your hands before eating. So you can see that's almost 100%. But people's behavior, which is the dashed red line, is very different. So a real disconnect between what people know and what their behavior is. And we see the other kind of problem too, right? That an intervention might budge people's hand washing behavior temporarily, but over time they go back to their old ways of acting. So psychology can tell us a lot about why this might be the case. And one simple way to think about this problem is through a distinction between what's sometimes called System 1 and System 2 thinking. And this is a kind of complex area, but a simple way of summarizing it is that human beings have two different psychological systems that control their behavior. And one of those systems is much more familiar to us. It's the kind of conscious, very rational system, the one that knows about germs and understands the impact of germs, for example, or understands social norms, can make decisions. It's the kind of internal mental economist, the one that's weighing up the pros and cons of a given action. And that's the space where many different behavioral interventions, including hand-washing interventions, have typically targeted. But we know now that there's another system that often is in charge of people's behavior, and that's the habit system. And it's a different part of the brain, and it kind of functions using a different set of rules. And unlike the sort of rational mental economist, it's really a mental satisficer, meaning it's not trying to work out what is the best or the right or the rational action. It's trying to work out, well, this is my standard way of doing things, this has worked for me in the past, and I'm just kind of automatically going to do again what I did before. And our interventions have historically not been so good at tackling that system. So the idea that I'm going to put to you guys today is that we can do a better job with shifting hand-washing behavior and other behaviors by keeping our focus on the kind of rational social norms, the intentions, the goals, the motivational elements of an intervention, but we also need to be thinking about this other system. And so the best approach is really to be addressing both, but historically we haven't had good tools for addressing this habit component. So in this project, what we've done is developed a set of simple rules that can be easily implemented in the field for increasing the likelihood that an intervention successfully disrupts people's habits, their existing habits, and then lay down new healthy habits. And each one of these principles I'm going to briefly walk you through. They've all come from the behavior change literature and a range of different academic disciplines, from psychology to cognitive science, and these can be thought of as kind of the best evidence-based ideas for increasing the likelihood that your intervention addresses habit successfully. So the first one is really the idea that when it comes to changing habits and instilling new ones, the environment really matters. And so we can't set up a new behavior if the context is changing a lot and people need to seek out whatever cues and products are necessary for performing the behavior. So in the context of hand washing, what does this mean? Well, it tells us that we really need to be thinking about ensuring a stable context, so placing the wash station in the path from the latrine back to wherever people are going, ensuring that soap and water are immediately available together consistently so that people don't have to do any decision making and the environment's kind of supporting them from the start. So that's principle number one. Principle number two is that, again, because habits involve kind of outsourcing control to the context and the environment, automating a behavior, we can use that to our advantage in a few ways. One is that we can kind of exploit opportunities that arise when people move or when their context changes. So, for instance, a change to the home environment or at the birth of a child or moving home, where people's habits are kind of temporarily disrupted. All of those automatic behaviors are temporarily more vulnerable to changing. That's one way that we can leverage context. Another is to piggyback on elements of the context that might already be triggering a behavior. And I think a nice example of this is the Marembo wash station that you can see here on the slide. So this is a project funded by the World Bank. One of the nice features of this wash station is that it has a mirror embedded in it. So the idea is that people will come up and they'll want to interact with the device because of the mirror, and hand washing kind of piggybacks on top of that behavior. So that's a second example of how to leverage context. The third idea is that we know that people don't form a new behavior if it's harder than whatever they're currently doing. So it's really important to try and, as much as possible, remove choice and decision-making and effort from whatever is the new healthy behavior that you're trying to promote. And so in the hand washing context, we can think about really trying to reduce, wherever possible, the steps that are involved in the new behavior. We can think about product ideas that involve combining soap and water together so that people don't need to do any thinking about those steps, and ensuring that people don't have to effortfully seek out the products or elements of the environment that they need to complete the behavior. The fourth idea is the notion that habits are sort of cued by things in the environment, or they can be cued by other actions in a sequence. So imagine yourself getting in the car and one action in the sequence triggers the next and triggers the next. So because habits function like that, we really need to think about what could be the cues in the environment that we could leverage to trigger a new healthy behavior. And so one nice example of this is the idea of painting footsteps on the floor of the bathroom coming out of the latrine and going to the wash station. So there's an immediate visual cue in the environment to tell you what the next behavior to perform is. And so there are a range of other interesting ideas here about ways to kind of leverage cues to support new habits. The fifth idea is a reminder that habits only emerge through doing. So people don't learn a new habit by watching someone else do something or by sitting in a classroom and just hearing a lecture. You need to actually go through the behavior yourself to form the habit. And so there are some nice examples. I think this Fit for Schools intervention from the Philippines. So instead of just teaching people in the kids in the classroom about the importance of hand washing, each day at the same time, the kids get up as a group and go to the bathroom and wash their hands together. So it involves that learning through doing element. And then the final principle is a kind of complex idea, but I think a really valuable one. And that's the idea that, yes, we want people to be forming new habits that are healthy and are kind of very mindless and automatic. So we want people to be washing their hands without even thinking about it. But we also want people to think of that behavior as having some deep meaning or some significance. And the reason we want that is that we want people to advocate to others that the behavior is a good thing to do, that it's moral. We want them to advocate for it. And if it's really a kind of automatic, unconscious habit, then you're less inclined to want to promote it and get other people on board with the behavior as well. So the final idea is to kind of try and strike a balance where, yes, we want to support people to form a very automatic, context-cued habit, but we also want them to think about that behavior as having some deeper meaning. And so some nice examples of this in practice are the Good Mums Club, right? So linking the idea of hand washing in infants back to being a good mother. There are some nice examples too of linking hand washing in children to being moral and growing up to be a good person. So kind of giving that moral quality to the hand washing behavior as a reinforcer. So I know that was a very quick summary. There's a white paper that's supporting this this set of thinking, but a kind of quick summary for you here would be that in this kind of intervention work, whether we're developing new products or education programs, social marketing, that we can keep our focus on all of those rational, motivational elements, but we want to build in as much as possible a set of principles that are going to both disrupt existing unhealthy behaviors and increase the chance that we form a healthy new habit. And in these few minutes here, I've tried to give you 6 evidence-based principles for that second piece. So it's been great to be with you. I hope the rest of the conference goes very well, and we can perhaps have a few questions now.